Night shift. John Matthews had started his night shift at a gas station that seemed abandoned, located in the rural outskirts of Ohio. At night, this old station, far from the town, felt like a place forgotten by time. For hours, no customers would come, only the sound of the wind howling through the desolate forest and the flickering, trembling light of the neon sign keeping him company. He had grown accustomed to this silence, but that night, something felt different. The weather outside was much colder compared to previous days. A light mist rose from the station's window panes. The wind creaked the metal sign, playing an eerie melody. John turned on the radio, but all he could hear was static. He turned it off to block out the noise, but then a sudden clicking sound drew his attention outside. At exactly 2:43 a.m., the bell above the door lightly rang. John quickly looked up and glanced toward the door, but there was no one. Only a movement caused by the wind. No customer had entered. He stared at the door for a moment in confusion before returning to his place. However, just at that moment, a soft clicking sound came from inside. John jumped to his feet, his hand reaching for the gun on his belt. Though the thought of using it didn't cross his mind, something felt wrong. He carefully scanned the room, checking every corner, but there was no one inside. Only that unsettling sound. Click, click, click. The sound seemed to be coming from next to the cash register. It was as if someone was watching the register. John's eyes scanned the area around the register. For a moment, he felt relief, as if there was nothing there. But then he heard the sound of footsteps. He slowly turned his head. Just a few steps away from the register, standing ominously, was a figure. The man's face was lost in the darkness, but his body was thin, long, and appeared to be twisted, as though something was broken inside. He wore an old suit, but it was dirty and worn. His face was pale, almost translucent. But the most terrifying thing was his eyes. His eyes were gone. The eye sockets were black, deep, and horrifying, like empty voids. For a moment, John thought it was all a hallucination, but the chill running down his spine told him otherwise. The man merely tilted his head slightly and smiled. It was not a human smile, nor a smile of any living being. It was a grin of something far worse. At that moment, John heard a whisper in his mind. At first, it was unclear, but then it became sharp and clear. "When I come, you shouldn't be here." As he heard that, John's heart raced, beating so fast it felt like it would leap out of his chest. His mind went foggy, but somehow he managed to maintain control and took a step back. The man didn't move, just continued staring at him with those deep, empty eyes. But suddenly the man vanished. John blinked, and for a moment, everything froze. The man who had only been there for a brief moment was now gone. John tried to pull himself together. He needed to see or hear something else, anything to make sense of this. But at that moment, he heard the sound of an engine. The air was cold, everything was silent, but the sound of a car approaching was unmistakable. John quickly turned to look out the window. His eyes immediately locked onto the road. The car was real, but it was no ordinary car. It was a 1971 Chevrolet, the same car belonging to a man who had disappeared 30 years ago. Just as John was about to scream, in the darkness near the riverbank, he saw the eyeless man getting out of the car. But there was something else. After the car parked, the man did not move alone. He was surrounded by fuzzy, shifting shadows. They moved like mimics, like dark creatures following in his wake. The shadows surrounding the car began to swirl around it, closing in quickly. The darkness moved closer, and John could feel the man's presence right behind him, so close he could feel his breath. Then the footsteps became clearer. John turned to flee, but he noticed the dark shadows wrapping around his arms, his legs like a river of darkness. The moment he felt the cold breath on the back of his neck, everything began to fade to black. The Texas Demon, the Curse of Waverly Lake. In the summer of 2017, 34-year-old Emily Carver, a school teacher living in Houston, had grown tired of the city. She was done with the noise, traffic, and chaos. All she wanted was peace, something quiet, surrounded by nature. That dream led her to a nearly forgotten small town in North Texas called Waverly. Emily had found an old but charming lake house online. The realtor told her the property had been vacant for years and the seller was desperate, which explained the shockingly low price. The pictures were beautiful, an isolated wooden house by a glassy lake, surrounded by thick pine trees. It looked like the perfect escape, but as the saying goes, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Emily bought the house without even visiting it in person. She arrived just before sunset, driving several hours from Houston. The lake house was far outside the town, tucked away in a secluded forested area. There were no neighbors nearby. The silence was soothing at first, but it was too quiet, unnaturally quiet. That first night, something strange happened. At exactly 2:37 a.m., Emily woke up with a jolt. She thought she heard something in the living room. There was an old radio there, left behind by the previous owners. It wasn't plugged in, yet somehow it had turned on. All she could hear was static, a low, buzzing frequency. She reached out, turned the dial, and the radio went silent. As she turned to leave the room, it came back on, same static. But this time, buried beneath the noise was a whisper. "Emily, why did you come?" Her body froze. Her heart was pounding. A few seconds later, the radio cut out again. Emily didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, she chalked it all up to exhaustion. But the house had more to say. When she went to take a shower, she noticed the mirror was fogged up, before she had even turned on the hot water. In the condensation, there were words as if written by a finger. "Go back." She blinked. The message faded instantly. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe it was just her nerves. But something was beginning to feel very wrong. Later that day, Emily drove into town. At the local market, an old woman approached her out of nowhere. She looked her dead in the eye and whispered, "You're staying in that house, aren't you? The one by the lake. That house doesn't stay empty by accident. It calls people in, and it doesn't let them go." Emily gave a polite smile, thanked her, and walked away. Probably just small-town superstition, she thought. But when the same figure from the mirror started appearing at night across the lake, standing motionless with a lantern in hand, watching her house, Emily began to wonder if she'd made a terrible mistake. The figure had no face, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stared. Shaken, Emily started digging. She visited the town's abandoned library where she found a dusty file in the archives, an old newspaper clipping from 1960. The headline read, "Family of 4 drowns in mysterious lake tragedy. No water found in lungs." According to the article, a family, mother, father, and 2 children, had once lived in the very house Emily now owned. One night they were found dead in the lake, but the autopsy found no water in their lungs, no signs of drowning. Official cause of death, undetermined. The town closed the case, but people whispered about what really happened. That house, they said, wasn't just haunted. It was a gateway, a place where the dead waited for company. Emily wanted to leave, but by then it was too late. Her car wouldn't start. Her phone had no signal. She was completely cut off from the world, like something or someone wanted her to stay. And then came the final night, July 13th, 3:33 a.m. She heard crying coming from the basement, the sound of a child. Terrified but compelled, she grabbed a flashlight and slowly descended the creaky stairs. The basement door was slightly open. She pushed it gently and stepped inside. There in the center of the floor was a small puddle of water. Lying in it was the lifeless body of a young boy. Eyes shut, skin pale. As Emily stepped closer, the boy's eyes suddenly snapped open. He let out a chilling scream. "You're staying with us?" The basement door slammed shut behind her. Her flashlight flickered and died. The old radio upstairs turned itself on again. This time, there was no static, just a voice. "Emily, Emily, you're one of us now." Emily Carver was never seen again. The police filed it as a voluntary disappearance. The case was quietly closed, but the people of Waverly know the truth. That house by the lake, it's not abandoned. It's hungry. Every year on July 13th at exactly 3:33 a.m., someone hears a woman screaming from the lake. And across the water, a faceless figure appears, standing still, holding a lantern. If you ever find yourself, doctor,